Okay, chapter 15, the role of spirituality. This is the last chapter and the longest, so. Spirituality is so vast an area in recovery that in this brief chapter I can only begin to describe it. Yet it is very helpful, some say crucial, in healing our child within. Spirituality is the last stage in our recovery. And paradoxically, it can never be a stage since it is an ongoing process throughout our pain, healing, and serenity. Beginning to define spirituality. In perhaps one of the briefest definitions, spirituality is about the relationships that we have with ourselves, with others, and with the universe. It is characterized by several key components, concepts, and principles, one of which is that it is paradoxal. Otherwise, seemingly opposite conditions and entities or experiences coexist comfortably together. For example, spirituality is both subtle and powerful. It is like our breath. We go about most of our day not even realizing we are breathing. Yet our breathing is so powerful that if we stop, we die. Spirituality is personal. Each of us have to discover it on our own, in our own way. It is highly useful in that it deals with a spectrum of life issues, from learning basic trust to getting free of suffering. And spirituality is experimental. To appreciate it, to use it, and to realize it, we have to experience it. We cannot know it ultimately through our intellect or through reason. It is not knowable, it is only beable. Which I feel it from Law of Attraction when I listen to Abraham Hicks, her meditations and speakings, and I apply it to my day-to-day life. It's beable. It is indescribable. It is so vast that even if we were to read all of the world's great holy books and listen to all of the great spiritual masters, we would still not fathom it. Spirituality is inclusive and supportive. It does not reject anything, and here is where organized religion may enter, because it is part of spirituality. Thus, while spirituality is not organized religion, it includes it, supports it, and then transcends it. It is healing and growth-inducing, and is thus ultimately fulfilling. The journey of discovery and healing described through this book is actually and ultimately a spiritual journey, although we usually do not view it as such at its beginning. As we enter and work through each healing stage, we move to the next stage, and then when we move from one stage to the next, we do not abandon or cancel the former stages. Rather, we transcend them, which means that while we still respect and use them as an appropriate and spontaneous for us, we are now operating and living our life from an entirely new level of consciousness, awareness, and being. These levels of consciousness parallel several different models of our spiritual path. Viewing our spiritual path. In the 1940s and 1950s, Maslow described a hierarchy of human needs, table 14. This progress from the bottom to top is, number 1, physiological, which is survival, food, shelter, safety, illness, in the table there. 2, safety, which is passion, emotions, basic sexuality. 3, the sense of belonging and love, which is awakening, emergent awareness. 4, self-actualization, knowing and being comfortable with our true self. So that's when you transform. Acceptance through conflict. 5, transcendence or spirituality. Transcendence is when you integrate understanding, creativity, natural knowing, and spirituality is unity, compassion to unity. These parallels and needs to be described in chapter 4 and table 2, where human needs are listed in more detail. They are also parallel the discovery and recovery of our child within, described through this book. And finally, they are parallel of levels of human awareness or consciousness. As we learn various ways of looking at it, conceptualizing and mapping our journey of recovery, we see that these are similar, perhaps even the same journey looked at a slightly different way. These three ways also parallel the path of the 12 steps of recovery. Surviving active alcoholism or chemical dependence, codependence, overeating, or other mistreatment and suffering, then admission of a problem, and then changing our isolation to sharing. That's where I am right now, including eventually with a higher power. As we progress in working the steps, next comes self-examination, catharsis, and personality change, followed by improved relationships, helping others, and then discovering serenity. As we grow in healing our child within, we begin to notice that our child is not limited to only one or two levels of being, awareness, or consciousness. Rather, our child within also parallels and exists along these same 7 levels. Okay. So, first one, helpless infant. Reading from the bottom of table 15. Okay, it's over there. These are the levels of being, awareness, or consciousness of our child within, which include unconditionally loving child, compassionate child, creative child, struggling and growing child, thinking and reasoning child, feeling child, and helpless infant. Helpless infant is first. Reading from the bottom, we note that a part of our child is a helpless infant. It wants and needs to be cared for and nurtured. As we cycle through our developmental stages, we first need affection, caring, and nurturing. Only when we have had these needs met are we ready to move to the next stage of our development. Since many neglected or mistreated children do not get their needs met in this way, they do not complete their development at this level. Yep. Part of this task of recovery is learning to get our needs met and get nurtured so that we can begin to recycle through this stage and thus complete our unfinished development in it. We also discover that there is only one person that can assure that we get the nurturing we need, and that one person is us. But it is not we as our false self. Rather, it is we as our total child within. Our child within is thus both our nurturer and the helpless infant that needs so desperately to be nurtured, and it is all the other parts. We are our own nurturer. We have to assure that we get what we need. We may at times get others to help us get what we need, but basically we are the only one that can attend to our needs. Next is the feeling child. The feeling child within us is full of feelings and emotions. Oh yeah. Like all 7 levels of being of our child within, it is interconnected with each of the other levels. Our feeling child lets us know when we need it to attend to something. That something might be something wrong, like a real danger or a hurt, or something pleasant, or it might be a feeling reaction from the past that comes up. Whatever it is, we are now attentive to it. Thinking and reasoning child. Our thinking and reasoning child is related to our ego, mind, or self. It is that which many people may think they are their identity. It is also often mistaken for the seat of power, yet it is only one part of us. Our thinking and reasoning child is perhaps the part of our true self that is the most directly connected to our false self. We may even say that they are friends. More than another, it understands our false self, and so we will be able to work with it when we need our false self. Many people have an exaggeration or overdevelopment of their thinking and reasoning child and their false self. Yep. As we recover, we bring into play that other parts of our child within, and we become more balanced, integrated, individualized, and whole. Struggling and growing child. Our struggling and growing child is the equivalent of the heart level of consciousness and is the key to our higher self and to realizing serenity. It is the link between our higher self and our lower self. It can be described in parts by the phrase acceptance through conflict. This means coming to accept what is by first recognizing or becoming aware of it, then working through the pain or enjoying the pleasure, and then coming to peace with it. It is an analogous to the grieving process, the process of forgiveness, turning it over, detachment, letting go, and to the process of telling our story. It uses these processes to accept and to grow. I'm also working on that. Creative child. Have you ever sensed or known that something was true or right and you didn't need any rational explanation to prove it? Our creative child is one that uses what men call hunches or gut reactions and what women call intuition to assist them in their lives. This is the part of us that knows naturally and inherently. Ideas, inspirations, and creative sparks come up for us through this part of our child regularly throughout our lives. For example, this part of us is where we might say most of the great work of art, science, literature, and play originate. However, our false self may at times try to disguise itself as our creative child, and its intuitions will often mislead us. Thus, we can check out any inspirations or intuitions that come to us and see how they turn out. If they work for us, they are likely to originate in our creative child. If they do not, they may have come up from our false self. Had that happen. There are several books available on this topic, such as Francis Vaughn's it's called Awakening Intuition. Compassionate child. Have you ever been with someone and on the listening to their story you became so touched or moved that a tear came to your eyes? Yet at the same time, while you knew they were suffering or had suffered and or experienced joy, you knew that it would not be helpful to try to rescue them or change them. When we have such an experience, we are in direct contact with their compassionate child. In fact, at this instant, we are our compassionate child. Our compassionate child is a sort of mirror image or direct opposite of our passionate child. Our passionate child may want to try to fix it, rescue, or change the other person. We may also notice that our creative child is the mirror image of our thinking and reasoning child, and that our unconditionally loving child is the mirror image of our helpless infant. Unconditionally loving child. This part of us is for many the most difficult to comprehend and to be. We were perhaps so mistreated growing up, and for some of us, we are still being mistreated, that we are unable to love anyone unconditionally, including ourselves. Because of this difficulty, and because I believe this is a core recovery issue for adult children of trauma, I will discuss it in more detail. So, it goes into love and unconditional. What time am I at here? Okay. Love and unconditional love. Low self-esteem, a sense of inherent or should I read this? Sorry. No, I guess still got lots to read. Okay. Low self-esteem, a sense of inherent defectiveness and unworthiness, is common experience among those of us who have been mistreated. It is also common amongst those who have developed an illness such as alcoholism, chemical dependence, an eating disorder, or a similar condition where one often feels like a victim. Related to several important factors, including repeated childhood and later trauma, inability to control alcohol, drugs, eating, or other people or whatever, we believe that we are simply not worthy of receiving love. Rather than believe we are unlovable, we can shift to believing that we do not need love. This translates into, I don't want to be loved. And then finally to, I will reject love no matter who gives it to me. we end up with frozen feelings or the inability to fully experience feelings and emotions, especially including love. It is often in recovery where we experience the unconditional love of a self-help group, a therapy group, a counselor, sponsor, or a trusted friend, that we begin to feel the healing effects of love. Indeed, love is the most healing of our resources, and it takes several years of being so loved to get well and stay well, and then we can begin to love others in return. A problem for many of us is we often view love as a limited experience or identity, such as that of falling in love or infatuation. In our recovery, we learn that love is not simply a feeling. Rather, it is an energy that is manifested by a commitment and a will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's total growth, which includes physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. As we grow in recovery, we begin to see that there are several different kinds of love. I outline in this table 16 according to 7 levels of consciousness. By such a view, we see that in our lower self, love is neediness, chemistry, or infatuation, possession, strong admiration, or even worship. In short, traditional romantic love. Many people who grew up in troubled homes and who experience a stifling of their child within become stuck at these lower levels or ways of experiencing love. Yes, been here. In healing our child within, we eventually discover, work through, and transcend to higher levels of love, including caring through conflict, forgiveness, trust, commitment to growth in ourself and in the loved one, unconditional empathy and acceptance, and pure peaceful being. I'm still working on this part. Be a while. By recognizing, experiencing, and letting go, and by using the spiritual practices described and taught by many, we can gradually open to the love within each of us. Finally, we learn that love is what we want, and what our higher power, as we understand it, use to heal ourselves. It is what is ultimately healing in group therapy, counseling, friendships, meditation, prayer, or whatever. We no longer have to be afraid of love or run away from it, because we know that it is inside of us as the core and healing part of our inner child or child within. It's the core and healing part. So our observer self. I'm going to read Okay, I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to go on to observer self and then realizing our serenity. And then the last part's on serenity. So see you in my next video. Stay positive, stay healing, be good to yourself, and do something that brings you joy. Bye.